Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, mid-tempo. The new course is available at Letsynthesize Academy.
Yo, so last week we made this cool beat. And because most of you guys were interested about the main bass laying under the guns, today I want to show you how to make it, so let's jump into it. Cool, so most of you guys were interested in the main bass sequence that sounds like this. So I showed you the full beat here, but the main bass sounds like this that I resampled. And actually it is not that complicated, especially inside Phaseplant, it is such a great synth. Okay, so I have 3 layers, as you can see, the main FM synth that sounds like this without process. I have the sub and the compressed sine but filtered, so basically the noise. So what I always do is I route the FM bass, so without the sub and all the other effects, into lane 1. I route the sub to lane 2 and I place the noise on top. This is why you can see the FM1 goes into lane 1, the sub goes to lane 2 and the noise goes to the master. So basically the noise avoids every process in the FX lanes. Okay, so let's start with the noise. It is really simple. As you can see, I'm just using a sine wave with the noise. And I distorted them and filtered them and also played a little with the movement. So I'm using this LFO to shape the noise a little as we go through the modulation. Pro tip, if you want to make your noise a lot more grittier, use the bias. So right now it's just a chaos, but if you crank up the bias, sounds a lot better inside the mix. Let's see, the sub is just a distorted sine, but I modulated the distortion again on the same shape. Now the main FM bass is a square wave, but I modulated it with the saw. So as you can see, here is the modulation and I control it with LFO1, but I didn't stop here. Right now the sound is a little too dry. I mean, it lacks of voices. As you can see, it almost sounds like electric noise or whatever, but I wanted to have more voices, add some unison. This is a cool one, but I wanted to use a little more noise on top of the modulator, so not the main oscillator, the square. I wanted to modulate the saws with something like that has a little more voices, higher overtone. So this is why wavetable is here. I modulate the saw with it. Let me deactivate the other layers so you can hear it better. Then I decided to add some unison to it. So I chose both of the ways. So right now it's nice and gritty and FM-y, especially if I add back the sub and the noise. Okay, so inside my head I was like, I wanted to have some compressed sine wave part of this bass and some FM part. This is why this LFO is here, where when it goes down I go to the compressed sine wave part, and when it is on higher it is the FM part. So this is why the filter is here. But the full sound is a little too dry, so it definitely needs some process. First I went with multipass. Okay, but it is still a little weird, so let's try to add some distortion using the Phaseplant. We are getting to it. And some more voices, more flingery kind of metallic tone on top of it using the comp filter. And as you can see, I'm using the same modulation source, LFO1 on it. And before the whole stuff, I think what the distortion and the OTT and other process does to the sound is a little too much on the top end. So this is why I pulled back the frequencies before the process, so before the distortion, using this low pass filter. So right now it's not too harsh. Okay, and after the distortion and all the other stuff, I wanted to focus a little more on the mids and mid-highs. This is why I chopped off the lows and the highs. Especially because after that I wanted to replace these frequencies with a flanger, so with a lot more metallic layer. Okay, so this was the FM bass, lane 1, and the sub goes into lane 3, where I try to crunch them together with the distortion. Pro tip, if you want to make it even grittier, crank up the bias. but I wanted to keep the FME tone to it. So slice EQ to cut a little on the mid bass. So basically with this we are removing the mud. Then an OTT. And after that, some gain with a limiter. So this is what I resampled and played around. And I have another instrument, another instance of the same sound with a little more process on it. This is how it sounds. I prefer this simply because of the clarity, but the previous one has a very nice compressed sine wave part that was definitely needed for the groove. So as you can see, the sub and the noise is pretty much the same, but the FM is a little different because I distorted this FM modulated square wave and played around with the filter before it goes into lane 1. A comb filter, a saturator, an OTT, and I love the disperser because that creates some nice little transient on the sound. The distortion, some notch movement. Especially before the OTT and the distortion, and a final filter to chop off the lows to keep room for the sub. And in lane 3 I add the sub and the FM and the noise together using just the gain and the limiter. The only difference in the modulation is I have LD43 that basically just moves the master pitch. So with all these you have lots of material to play with in this little sequence. Don't forget that you can grab this project from my Patreon below and click here for my academy if you want to dig deep into music production knowledge, and see you guys next time. Peace.